We'd like to call the Senate Health and Welfare Committee to order at this time. We're kind of on a tight schedule today. We have our EMS state providers having a presentation across the way, starting at 3:30, so hopefully we can get through our agenda by then. Our secretary at this time will take a silent roll of the committee members that are here. And with that, I think we'll get started. Committee members, first thing on our agenda is one of our administrative rules, docket number 16-0103-2301. And our presenter is Jathan Nalls. If you'd like to come to the podium at this time. Welcome to committee. Please identify yourself for the record, and the time is yours. And you can turn that microphone on at the base of there. It's a little toggle switch, should be. There you go. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jathan Nalls. I'm the Systems of Care Section Manager with the Bureau of EMS and Preparedness in the Department of Health and Welfare's Division of Public Health. I would like to thank you for making time for me today on this agenda to present these rule changes for your consideration. I come before you today to present two companion dockets. The first is 16-0103-2301 EMS agency licensure requirements, and then I'll follow with 16-0102-2301, our EMS definitions. First, I would like to direct you to 16-0103-2301, which starts on page 17 in your legislative rules review book. And I will ask the committee to approve this pending rule as final. In our review of 16-0103, we found that many of needed. As a result, we've made extensive changes to the chapter with significant external stakeholder involvement at every step. This engagement with stakeholders was via formal negotiated rulemaking meetings and additional informal meetings open to all stakeholders from every aspect of EMS, public and private, to help us craft this rule language, part of which allowed agencies to strike a good balance between agency sustainability and public safety. Additionally, we invited all stakeholders to review the final pending drafts on our Bureau website and offer additional input. And we ultimately had 100% agreement from all participating stakeholders on all rules in the chapter. I'll briefly summarize the most high-level changes. We eliminated all current operational declarations. These are found on page 38 to 39 of the red blue line version of the chapter. Operational declarations are specific activities that licensed EMS agencies declare to the Bureau on their license application. And their EMS license is based on the declarations that the agency qualified for and the type of EMS agency it is. However, we found that these operational declarations was causing some pretty significant confusion among EMS agency about what they could and what they could not do. So we built a brand new license model that incorporated some of the operational declarations to make it much more clear to agencies, while at the same time eliminating a lot of other ones that were found to be barriers to agency operations and sustainability. Section 201, EMS agency service types. These are found on page 21. We added a new licensing model that incorporates agency primary responsibilities in the license title, which eliminates confusion associated with the current operational declarations. Section 203, specialty services. You'll find these on page 22. These changes allow EMS agencies to declare specialty services if they choose to. These include critical care, community health EMS, tactical EMS, and special pathogen transport. Agencies practicing these specialty services must report this to the Bureau and meet the requirements for each before being allowed to advertise or practice these services. Moving on to Section 301, Specialty Service Personnel Requirements. This is found on page 24. This adds new rules that clearly outline the personnel requirements for each of the specialty services an EMS agency chooses to offer. Section 303, Air Medical Transport Service Personnel Requirements. You'll find these on page 25. The changes to the Air Medical Transport Service personnel requirements allow air medical transport services more flexibility in medical crew configuration for each flight. Additionally, it requires at least one medical provider on each flight to possess critical care credentials as defined by the EMS Physician Commission Standards Manual. Moving on to Section 511. This is found on page 28. For non-911 agencies, incoming requests for out-of-hospital transports must be recorded in-house and retained for 1 year. Section 601, this is found on page 30. EMS agency ambulance service response agreements. We added a requirement for non-911 transport services to provide their customers that have agreements with them with written criteria in order to reasonably identify potential medical emergencies where the caller should be directed to 911, unless that transport agency already has an ambulance on site. We also updated the minimum equipment standards 2024-1 and the EMS agency standards manual 2024-1 incorporated by reference. So, Madam Chair, committee members, that concludes my presentation on this docket. I respectfully request approval of pending docket 16-0103-2301 as final, and I am happy to stand for any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jathan. Special pathogens transport, is that something that is brand new to the EMS world?
Mr. Nalls.
Yes, Senator Taylor. That came about as kind of the COVID pandemic and us also working with FEMA and ASPR on some, what happens if there is a special pathogen that's very virulent, very contagious. So we did add that as something that an agency can practice. We also added personnel requirements requiring specific training on the equipment and disease containment, waste management before they can actually practice that as a special pathogen transport.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Having survived and lived through that particular pandemic and changing PPE on a almost minute-to-minute basis, it became incredibly expensive for our organization. Was any thought given or any provisions made for funding and training for the multiple different agencies that would be affected by this?
Mr. Nalls.
Senator Taylor, that's a very good question. We have not brought anything as far as funding for that particular type of specialty transport. EMS agencies can choose or choose not to engage in that type of specialty transport, but no funds have been provided at this time.
Thank you. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. And this is a lot of work. And the fact that maybe the room isn't packed with people because they're across the hall, but having seen these rules before, usually we get a lot of response. Did you get any negative feedback that has not been resolved yet in your rulemaking process?
Mr. Nalls.
Thank you, Senator Lee, for that question. We have received no negative feedback. We have gone way overboard in engaging the agencies, both private for-profit as well as, the public agencies. And it has taken a lot of work to kind of bring together a cohesion of these rules that everybody was happy with.
Senator Bjerke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Nalls, maybe just for my own education here, the Bureau obviously has a lot of latitude on making these changes. What really prompted the changes other than, input from stakeholders? And what authority other and outside of the Bureau did you incorporate? National standards, state regs, whatever. I mean, how did that all come to be? What was the nexus for all this to come together?
Mr. Nalls.
Thank you, Senator Bjerke. Another great question. We did significant analysis of the EMS agency laws of multiple other states. And we used that to kind of create the framework to start crafting these rules. And just analyzing the rules that were on the books previous to this and finding out, a lot of them were just old and outdated and really no longer applied to the national standards. The EMS national standards has grown or expanded tremendously over the last decade. So we felt that we needed to update our rules accordingly.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nalls. Some great information. I'm going to backtrack again to that special pathogens. I'm trying to understand, and what I see is a gap possibly in service. If one ambulance service decides that they're not going to train or can't afford to train for that, where does that put that EMS agency when a 911 call comes in and they're not able to respond because they haven't had that training or chose not to take the training?
Mr. Nalls.
Thank you, Senator Taylor. Again, that's a very good question, and it has, it's a difficult situation. For one, having the special pathogen transport, we can't tell agencies they have to do this. It's a specialty service, and we created this new specialty service, brand new, because of, emerging diseases that could hit our state at any time. And to date, no agency is on the books as having that level of training. So we've created the new special pathogen transport specialty service to kind of prompt agencies to more or less get into that business. And, we're hoping to expand that and as well as the training and the equipment that's needed.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify on this docket at this time? Seeing none, and we have none online either. Thank you so much for your presentation today. Committee, this docket 1601032301 is before the committee. Senator Bjerke.
Madam Chair, for a motion.
A motion's in order.
I move we approve docket number 1601032301.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this docket. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, committee. Next on our docket is 1601022301. Mr. Nalls, the time is yours if you'll identify yourself again for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Jathan Nalls. I'm the Systems of Care Section Manager with the Bureau of EMS and Preparedness in the Department of Health and Welfare's Division of Public Health. Thanks for making time for me on today's agenda to present these rule changes for your consideration. And at the end of my presentation, I will again request the committee approve the pending rule as final. I'm here today to present docket 160102-2301 EMS definitions, which starts on page 4 in your legislative rules review book. The EMS definitions chapter provides definitions for all of the EMS rules, and they're required to appropriately interpret EMS rules. After our rewrite of 160103, the agency licensure requirements, we also found that we needed to open this chapter, 160102 EMS definitions, in order to remove some definitions that are no longer applicable and add new definitions resulting from our rewrite of 160103. The most notable changes to this chapter are we define some new terms in the proposed EMS licensing model. A few examples are rules 010-02, 010-03, and 010-19, which, there were minor changes, but they did result in some new definitions. We also clarified several rules such as 011-10 that's found on page 10 that has to do with consolidated emergency communication systems and public safety answering points. On page 15 as being part of or coordinated by a government entity. These are used when 911 call centers are received and emergency services are dispatched. We added several definitions such as 010.01 found on page 7 that clarifies the definition of a 911 call and associates it directly with a consolidated emergency communication system or a public safety answering point. We added definitions for emergency driving procedures at 011.22 on page 11 and emergency response at 011.27 found on page 12 to align with section 49-623 of Idaho Code. Several definitions were removed that were eliminated during this or the previous year's rulemaking activities. A few examples of those were defining the pay status of EMS personnel. These were removed as there's no mention of these terms in any of our EMS rule chapters. The definition of the EMS Advisory Committee was also removed as the rule referenced in the definition was repealed several years ago and there's no longer any reference to MSAC in any of the EMS rules. This change makes no changes to the construct or responsibilities of or the work of MSAC, and they continue to meet as they always have. Madam Chair and committee members, this concludes my presentation. I respectfully request approval of pending docket 160102-2301 as final, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nalls. My question has to do with the definition of the community health EMS. So I see that as a new definition. But when I look over at the EMS language on the department's website, I'm not finding a direct nexus to statute. Is that already referenced in statute, or is this a new word that we're creating? I see that it's part of IDAPA, but not necessarily statute. Can you point me back to where we came up with that?
Mr. Nalls.
Thank you, Senator Lee. It is referenced in statute, or at least defined in statute, as well as the different providers of community health EMS. I can't recall at the moment the obvious reference to that, but Idaho Code does define that.
Follow up?
Madam Chair, thank you. And I'll do my research, and I appreciate, again, the fact that this room is not packed says a tremendous amount, those of us that have been in this committee for a while, so I really appreciate your, and I'll do a little bit more research. But again, if it is defined in statute, I'm wondering why we're redefining it in code.
Mr. Nalls, would you like to respond?
Senator Lee, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that right now. It's always been defined in definition, in rule. So we maintain that.
All right. Okay, committee. Seeing no more questions, is there anybody in the audience that would like to testify on this docket at this time? Okay, seeing none, this docket is properly before the committee at this time. Senator Wintrow.
Madam Chair, I'm so sorry for the delay. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, you may.
I'm so sorry, Senator. Chair and Mr. Nalls, how many, this is kind of just a curiosity question, but in the non-transport services in the state, how many services are like that don't transport folks but respond to a scene to do medical care?
Mr. Nalls.
Thank you, Senator Wintrow. Without having the data in our iGEM system, I can't answer that definitively, but there are, I don't know, I could, yeah, without having that data right now, but there are a lot.
Okay. Senator Wintrow, you might run across the hallway. Maybe you can get an answer to that here in about 10 minutes. Okay, committee, this docket is properly for the committee at this time. Senator Taylor.
For a motion,
A motion is in order.
I move to approve docket 1601022301.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this docket. Any more discussion? Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Our last item is a gubernatorial reappointment, and he is online, and hopefully our system will work today. Did I double click on it? Okay. Hey, it worked. Okay, this is the gubernatorial reappointment of Dr. John MacMillan of Twin Falls. Welcome to the committee, Dr. MacMillan. The time is yours. I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us your presentation, and then we'll have questions from our committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John R. MacMillan. I oftentimes go by the name of Randy. I am, before you to seek confirmation of my reappointment to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality Board of the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. Experience-wise, I've been on the board since its inception in 2000. And have been reappointed multiple times. My training is in fish pathology, fish diseases, and in that process I've become very familiar with water quality issues, chemical issues associated with water, and things like that. I was a professor of veterinary and aquatic animal medicine before moving to Idaho to join a seafood company called Clear Springs Foods, where I served as their first their director of research and then became their vice president of research and Environmental Affairs. I worked at Clear Springs for pretty close to 30 years and dealt eventually with quality assurance for the seafood products. Clear Springs Foods has since been sold since I retired, which was about 4 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago. And I have been successfully retired since 2019, and fortunately got out just before COVID-19 occurred in a pandemic way. I serve not only on the Board of Environmental Quality, currently on the Board of Environmental Quality, but I participate as past president of numerous groups, including the National Aquaculture Association, and have been deeply involved with water right issues facing the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. Was appointed by Governor Otter to represent spring water users on the Comprehensive Aquifer Management Plan development. So that's pretty much it, Madam Chairman. I do appreciate your consideration of my reappointment, and I will stand for questions.
Committee, do we have any questions for Dr. MacMillan at this time? Senator Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, but more of a comment. I wish we had more time today because I would love to pick your brain on the quagga mussel and all of those pieces. But I really am impressed by your experience, your education, and want to express my appreciation for your willingness to serve. We need people just like you to be able to provide this perspective on the board, and I'm just grateful that you're willing to provide this service.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. MacMillan. Okay, committee, Senator Wintrow?
Madam Chair and Dr. MacMillan, just one comment. Go green. We know what that means, Michigan State. Good job. I worked there years ago.
Thank you. Okay, committee, we will, and Dr. MacMillan, we'll vote on your reappointment tomorrow at our meeting, at our regular meeting today. But thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee.
Okay, committee, thank you for your work today. We have a short committee, so any of you that would like to go across the hallway to attend the EMS presentation, we are adjourned. We'll see you tomorrow.